This presentation is designed to make CPE course application development clear. The expectation is that when an application is completed entirely and accurately, approval at the state level happens the first time a course is submitted. To do so, we need to start things off right. We need to make sure that we have a way to reach you. Provide the email address you wish us to use when communicating with you. Give us a phone number where we can actually reach you day and or night. Not that we would call you, late in the evening, but we might need to be able to reach you after work hours. When you're developing a course, using a catchy title for the course is really important. Be sure it gives a clear hint to the content of the course, but intrigues folks to dig a little deeper and read your description. Choosing the number of credits for a course is really critical. Each credit is a minimum of 14 hours of instruction and 16 hours of job-embedded assignments for a total of 30 hours of work. So if you're developing a course that is 30 hours of work, that's only 1 credit. It's not 3. So be sure that you're clear of the 14 hours of instruction and 16 hours of job-embedded work. While doing this online is a little more difficult to ascertain, be thinking about the amount of content that you're providing and whether or not you would view this as a 3-credit graduate level course at a university level if you're giving it three credits. So be sure that you're meeting that actual expectation and not just claiming the work that's there. Finally, are you a new instructor? If you're a new instructor for the Beaver Valley Intermediate Unit, and you're not a BVIU employee, you'll need to complete a tax form for us. When you're teaching a course for the BVIU and you're not a BVIU employee, you're considered a contractor, and this form gives us the information that's necessary to legally communicate with the IRS. As the application indicates, if in fact you are a new employee, or a new course instructor, you'll want to contact Pat Dixon, and she can provide you with the necessary form. Pat can be reached via email at pdixon@bviu.org. That's P as in Paul, D as in deer, I as in ice cream, X as in xylophone, O, N as in Nancy, at bviu.org. In terms of the course content section of the application, there are 6 areas that PDE defines or identifies as content areas that can be taught for the purposes of graduate level. Your course would need to follow in one of those 6 categories: academic content studies, school administration, standard area curriculum and assessment, student social and health issues, teaching and learning professional development, or technology. Please choose the one that you feel is the best fit for the course. And additionally, PDE also requires that we identify a subcategory that really just gives additional detail about the content being taught. We've provided a few examples on the application. Take a look at those, and we're really just looking for you to identify the content of your course a little bit more deeply. That will enable us to better communicate with the department when we're submitting your application for approval. In terms of the course description, when you describe your course, know that this description will be used for advertising purposes. Whatever you write in your course description is what we're going to put on the website for advertising. So be sure you write what you want people to read about your course, what you want them to know in order to bring them in and hook them with the idea of taking your course. But in addition, there are also 2 things that PDE looks for when reading the description. Failing to identify both of those things will result in an immediate rejection of the course. They're really very strict about that. And those 2 things are: how is this course aimed at increasing student achievement? And what Pennsylvania academic or other standards are being addressed by the content? If this course is not standards aligned and does not focus or have the intent to improve student achievement, the department is not interested in having us run the course, and they will reject it. In terms of statement of need, When you're completing that section of the application, there are things that are really critical, and that is the department is looking for data, actual data, not theory, not summarization, but actual data. And this data must also be local data. You must include actual statistical data providing the need for this course. The data must be local to our region and cannot be pulled from research stating a need for such professional development, but rather evidence of a need in the area. It does not have to be specific to Beaver County, but certainly to Western Pennsylvania. When you're developing your measurable competencies, simply think of these in terms of the word objective. So if you see competency listed anywhere, just think about objectives. Right? When you're identifying your competencies or learning objectives for the course, you will also need to be sure to answer each of the sections in the application. PDE is very specific about their expectations. You must be sure to write your objectives in measurable terms. Stating your participants will understand the meaning of nuclear waste is not measurable. Stating your participants will identify environmentally safe measures for exposing of nuclear waste is measurable. Be sure to explain how your objectives are aligned to the content you've identified in your course. If your course content is instructional strategies, and your objectives is that participants alter 3 lesson plans to align to the distinguished level of Charlotte Danielson's instructional framework, you need to explain how that objective is aligned to the content of instructional strategies. You might do so by stating the lesson plan will contain at least one of the new instructional strategies taught in the course. PDE is not just interested in the objectives that you have developed, but they want to know, how did you come to the realization that those objectives were the ones that were necessary? So in this section, they're looking to know how you identified the objectives. Did you determine how you would measure participant success first and then develop the objectives, using backward design, for example? You need to explain that participants will be able to meet the expectations in the time allotted. For example, if you have 3 objectives, you might state that each objective will be mastered in a certain number of course hours. Finally, you want to identify whether or not the course objectives are properly identified. If you develop the objectives as a result of reading some recent research on technology instruction, and your objectives are on classroom management, that would be a clear disconnect. So we're looking to determine, how did you come to the need for those objectives? How did you establish what those objectives are? And we want to make sure there's a clear alignment from your objectives and the need and how it is that you determined what those objectives were. What about the method of your instruction? What are the instructional strategies that you intend to use? It is critical that you use instructional strategies that are steeped in adult learning theory. Your participants in this course will be adults. Now, if you're developing a course that is specifically for students, then of course you would alter this and make sure that you would need to alter it to make sure that your instructional methods were for students. However, in terms of the application, we wouldn't need to submit that to the department for approval, as we don't get courses for students approved through the department. So we're assuming that this application that you're completing is specifically for adults. It's important to know that adults come to the table with a tremendous amount of information, and it's critical that you honor that knowledge. Included in this session of the course, you will see some links to adult learning theory that you might want to explore that will give you a strong understanding in that area. So when you're developing the course, you want to make sure that teachers have the ability to contribute to their own learning. In fact, you will be asked as part of this course to contribute an instructional strategy or example based on adult learning theory in the database that was coming a little later that I just discussed. This database will be accessible for all in the course, and doing so will add value for all of us. Finally, we want to be sure your strategies will strengthen the likelihood your participants will reach the intended objective. Be sure to explain how that is done. The tough part of the course development is complete, but we need a few other things. Include, it can be a separate attachment if needed, a session-by-session outline of the course, including how much time is spent per day on an activity or an assignment, making sure it's clear that those number of hours that you need for the number of credits you've identified are outlined. And you also need to identify the final project. What's the criteria for being proficient on the final project or the final exam or the final assignment? And how, in fact, is that assessment aligned to the objectives that you've identified? If your assessment is not directly aligned to the objectives, the course will in fact be rejected. So you want to make sure we're looking for really clear alignment from the need to the objectives, to the instructional strategies, to the assessment that you're using. And because all courses must be aligned at improving student achievement, we need a way to know if the courses are making a difference. We're asking you to provide an example or an explanation of how this could be done for your course. Do you wish to have follow-up surveys sent out a month later, or 3 months later, or twice, maybe 3 months and 6 months later, to the participants that have participated in your class? You might want to include a couple of brief questions that would aim to ascertain whether or not teachers have seen an improvement in their classes as a result of the coursework they learned in your class. So that's what we're looking there. Explain to us how we can follow up, and give us the questions. If, as an example, if you're going to use a survey, give us the actual questions that you'd want to ask participants in that survey. And last but certainly not least, this course has graduate level expectations, and the department is pretty strict on detailing those. So you want to ensure you're meeting the requirements of the number of hours, both in and outside of class, that are required. And you can simply state that that information is detailed in the syllabus, as long as your syllabus, in fact, has those hours. What about enrollment limits? Do you have a limit of the number of participants that you will allow to take your course at one time? Do you have a minimum expectation? For example, we know with adult learning theory that you have to spend a tremendous amount of time getting folks to work with each other, to engage folks in learning. If you only have 2 or 3 people in the class, that's probably an unlikely scenario in which you would find the content to really be dug deeply. So you'll want to consider both minimum and maximum enrollments if you feel it's necessary. And finally, we're looking for you to identify any teaching certificate that would be supported by taking this course. If you're doing a course on environmental education, you might not list physical education, for example, as a certificate that would be supported. But if you're doing something on classroom management, as an example, you might be able to list a large number of certification areas, in which case you could put K through 12 all teaching certifications, something of that nature. Looking forward to reading your applications, and I'm hopeful this PowerPoint presentation will give you some guidance in their development. Please contact me should you need some additional assistance. My email address is CLW, as in Christine Lynn Wagner, CLW @ bviu.org. Look forward to reading them. Talk to you soon.